Okay, and there was the Smith-Hughes Act of 1917, which gave federal funding for manual training in two forms. Okay, so this is how we got shop class. Smith-Hughes Act of 1917 gave federal funding for manual training in two forms. First, as part of the general education and as a separate vocational program. General education, that's for the middle class. Vocational program, that's for the lower class. The invention of modern shop class thus serviced both cultural reflexes of the arts and crafts movement at once. The children of the managerial class could take shop as an enrichment to the college prep curriculum, making a bird feeder to hang outside mom's kitchen window, whether mom wanted it or not, but just something for the boy to make to give to his mom, and to celebrate, look, he can do something with his hands. And on the other hand, we had the children of laborers. And those children of laborers were supposed to be socialized into the work ethic, right? So the children of laborers were supposed to be taught to be good laborers, meaning they would, of course, stay in the same class as their parents were in. The need for such socialization was not simply a matter of assimilating immigrants, and here's where they were from, Southern and Eastern Europe, who lacked a Protestant work ethic. So what does this mean? Southern and Eastern Europe lacking a Protestant work ethic? We're talking about Catholics. So the idea, right, remember our founding fathers and our history is largely with the idea of Protestant values and what it means to be a Protestant, and possibly also with stereotypical attitudes toward the Catholic people and viewing them from the outside as being not quite worthy of us. And so the Protestants recognized as a necessity the broader working class population. So basically what we're going into now, what's written by Robert Hoxie is, you know, that these immigrants are not good workers. They are not what we want. We've complained bitterly of the poor and lawless material from which we must recruit our workers. Poor and lawless, also assumed to be criminals, these immigrants were, compared with the efficient and self-respecting craftsmen who applied for employment 20 years ago. Okay, so this is an anti-immigrant sentiment that is pushing the attitude that shop class needs to be given for these immigrant people so that they can become good workers for the businesses that existed in their world. Needless to say, scientific managers were concerned more with the efficient part of this formula than with the self-respecting part. Scientific managers, those are the people who make observations about how work is done and decide what is the most efficient way, and then they can take an unskilled worker and make that unskilled worker part of a team that does 10% of what one efficient worker did 100% of. It's the study of how the body works to make a machine, basically. Okay, so they want to make workers efficient and attentive, ironically at the same time when the actual labor had been degraded by automation. That is to say, they're demanding an efficient workforce, but they're at the same time replacing those men with machines that can do the labor of 20, perhaps, that don't need breaks, perhaps, that never call in sick, perhaps. Automation was the cost of a lot of the loss of a lot of those jobs. Okay, so here we go. Of the Smith-Hughes Act's two rationales for shop class, one vocational, the other general ed, only the latter, right, only general ed, emphasized the learning of aesthetic, mathematical, and physical principles through the manipulation of material things, right? So the kid whose dad is maybe a newspaper man or maybe an advertiser is going to take shop class, and he's going to be learning about physics, he's going to be learning about geometry, he's going to be learning about art while he is in shop class, but not the vocational learner. The vocational learner is only going to learn, hold this tool, do this with it, which is not really the same thing. So the vocational worker is really learning how to become a cog in a wheel, a piece of an assembly line, right, in Henry Ford's shop. It is not surprising that the act, the Smith-Hughes Act, it came 4 years after Henry Ford's innovation of the assembly line. So these were people who were being designed to be part of an assembly line. The Act's dual educational scheme mirrored the assembly line's serving of cognitive aspects of manual work. Excuse me, not serving, severing, splitting apart the brain work from the handwork. Such a partition of thinking from doing has bequeathed us the dichotomy of white collar and blue collar, right? The thought that white collar is brain and blue collar is hand and back. Mental versus manual. These seem to be categories that inform the educational landscape even now. And this entails two big errors, Crawford says. First, it assumes that all blue-collar work is mindless, or rather, as mindless as the assembly line. And second, it assumes that white-collar work is still recognizably mental in character. Well, if white-collar work is considered to be, for example, office work, I worked for the IRS for 7 years, and that's all office work. But some of it is brain work, and some of it is really just physical, pushing carts from here to there. Is not really a mental activity, it's labor. Okay, so it's not a guarantee that there is a really huge divide between brain and mind when you're talking about white collar and blue collar, or the location of a job. It says, yet there is evidence to suggest that the new frontier of capitalism, right? He's still talking about our economic structure. You wonder why he's talking about our economic structure when he's talking about our education system. Well, what he's identified, and brilliantly and wonderfully, is that our economic system has everything to do with the way that our education system is shaped, and who gets what and who gets to do what. So the new frontier of capitalism lies in doing to office work what was previously done to factory work, draining it of its cognitive elements. And arguably, that's really already happened. When office work or any kind of white-collar work is divided into so many different pieces and parts that each person who does it is only doing one repetitive action over and over and over again, like an assembly line, then you've got it. Then you have applied Henry Ford's principles to white-collar work. Paradoxically, educators who would steer students toward cognitively rich work options, they might do this best by steering students toward the manual trades where they would be using their brains, because that's where the money and the opportunity and the job satisfaction is, when you can use your brain, based on the firmer grasp of what such work is really like, and that's a fair point. Educators very often don't have a firm grasp of what manual labor is really like, because they haven't done it, because they've been, in college and in classrooms. And would this not be in keeping with their democratic mission, right? Educators have a democratic mission. Educators want education to be available equally to everybody, regardless of class or ethnicity. So Crawford is making the argument that we shouldn't prejudge what blue-collar work is. We should instead learn how blue-collar work might be very satisfactory for a good portion of our students. Let them publicly honor those who gain real craft knowledge, the sort we all depend on every day. So that is how he ends the section called Arts, Crafts, and the Assembly Line.